the self-diagnosing on TikTok and all social media is really dangerous, because it's leading to people talking, but it's people saying, well, I've got that, but it's not something that you can have. You haven't caught a virus. You haven't got a thing. You're having a reaction to a life, whatever's going on in your life at that moment. So reducing it to a label narrows it down, limits you, and kind of locks you into a pattern.
That's interesting, because words really matter when we label ourselves. So if we say, I am ADHD, then we're essentially embodying that experience versus I'm experiencing ADHD symptoms, I'm experiencing extreme overwhelm, anxiety, toxic thoughts or intrusive thoughts that are harmful. I'm experiencing versus this is what I am, right?
Exactly. When you take on that persona, your brain simply does what your mind tells it to do. Your brain is a host. Your body is a host. It's a host to what? Your mind. Your mind is where you are, your intelligence, your ability to love, your ability to have perceptions, to experience life, to appreciate a sunset, to have a conversation, to follow your dreams. That is your mind. But not only is your mind this psychological thing, it's also running your brain and your body. So it's controlling your heart rate, it's controlling your brain, it's controlling your genes, your neurophysiology, your biochemistry. So it's doing a lot of stuff. When you're dead, your brain just disintegrates, your body disintegrates, but your mind, whatever belief system we have, it's got this eternal component. So therefore, whatever we say with our mind, how we perceive, how we look at things, that is going to influence what it looks like in the brain, because whatever we think about becomes, it's electromagnetic forces we generate, that then changes structures in the brain and the body, and then the brain and the body just follow the bidding of the mind. So if I'm telling myself, oh my gosh, I've got those symptoms, TikTok with one says this, and I've got that, I've got that, I've got that, you then merge, because your mind now tells your brain, and your brain just simply merges with what your mind tells it to do. So if you are, whatever you think about the most is growing. So if I'm listening to that all day long, ADHD, I've got that symptom, I've got autism, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, you merge with your environment, you wire that in, and then you start believing it. Now it's contrary to who you are. It's contrary to the wisdom that's in what we call the non-conscious mind. So it creates conflict, and that in itself creates anxiety, which is why we see anxiety being this distorted version of anxiety, where anxiety no longer is working for us, it's working against us. So it kind of shifts the process.
So what would you say then is the root cause of anxiety for most people?
The root cause anxiety is a signal. It's an emotional signal, and it's telling you that there is something going on in your life that you need to pay attention to. So it's going to have a multiplicity of different sources. So it could be a child at school and they're being bullied. It could be starting a new business. It could be in a relationship. Everything that we experience that's unexpected puts us into a level of anxiety. Anxiety is good in that it puts our body into healthy stress, and healthy stress sharpens all of our wits. We tap into when we really embrace it and face it, we then dive into the depths of our wisdom. And that's in the non-conscious mind, and we can talk about the levels of mind, so it makes more sense in a moment. So the cause of anxiety in people is facing the unexpected, of life's full of all these unexpected things that happen, and you can't predict them. So we have anxiety as a coping mechanism to help us to get into a high alert state with all our neurophysiology then operating for us. And then we can move forward if we manage it, if we know what we're feeling. But if we're told, oh, that's bad, and we're getting all this constant media information, which we have for the last 40, 50 years, that anxiety is bad, it's not bad. It only becomes bad if you distort it. So
what does that mean? Like you ruminate on it, you think about it.
Think that, oh, I'm feeling this in me, there's something wrong. Instead of saying, I'm feeling this in me, what is going on, as opposed to what is wrong. So if I think what is wrong, and I know, at the back of my mind, what's one of those labels, I've got an anxiety disorder, I've got something wrong with my brain, and I merge with that thinking, that will create anxiety. Then I can't think. Then whatever I'm dealing with in life becomes very confusing, because I'm not thinking clearly. I'm thinking in a loop that is stuck between the conscious mind, which is really limited, and the brain just doing its bidding. And I get stuck in this loop instead of going deep and finding the wisdom. And that makes our anxiety increase, because we don't have clarity of vision. So if I think it's a problem, I lose my vision. And then it becomes, and that's really the root cause, is we think something's a problem, and it could be, but we can find the answer. But if we get stuck in that loop, we get all confused and chaotic, and then the anxiety builds, and then it starts distorting.
Yeah.
So then anxiety flips, and then everything in your body, all the stress response which goes with anxiety, which is supposed to make you alert, now makes you confused. So too much of the good stuff. All the chemicals, like we hear cortisol, for example, is the stress chemical. We hear, that says though it's bad. Without cortisol, you can't survive. It's when cortisol is in the wrong amounts. So when I think anxiety is bad for me, when I think this feeling is something wrong with me, I then flip the coin on that cortisol and all the other, and it never operates alone. It operates with all the other chemicals, and it throws all that into disruption. And then it throws the energy balance in the brain and so on. And so that then makes us feel terrible, and that's what creates the anxiety. That's the root. And then you need to get beyond that to solve the problem, because we can solve our problems obviously with help, sometimes without help, but we can do a lot on our own.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we should do everything alone. We should always reach out for help. Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah. And when people self-diagnose that they have a mental disorder or mental problem, you're saying that's very dangerous. But what about if we go to a mental health specialist, a therapist, a doctor, and they give a diagnosis that we're ADHD or whatever it might be? Is that helpful or hurtful? And what should we do next after being diagnosed with a mental health disorder?
So that's really a good question. It's an excellent question. It'll make it worse, because
Really?
the thing that what we've seen from the research, and there's quite a few of our scientists that are trying to counter this narrative, and the narrative is that get your label, get your diagnosis, get your medication. And it feels like you're solving a problem, because that's what you do if you have diabetes, or if you have something wrong with you, go sort it out. And I'm all for sorting things out, but you don't need a label to sort out a life issue. You do need a label if it's cardiovascular disease or something, because we've got, that's dealing with physical symptoms. But when we deal with stuff that's happening in the mind, that does affect your physiology, which I've mentioned already.
It could be an invisible disease, right? Or an invisible symptom.
Well, that's the thing, it feels invisible. That's because we don't understand the mind. But it's we've got this thing that if I feel it physically, it's more important than what I can't feel physically. But we've got to shift our perspective on what do we feel physically. If you feel anxious, you feel terrible. If you feel depressed, you feel terrible. If you feel guilty or jealous, you don't feel great at all, or whatever it may be. If you feel any kind of overwhelm, you don't feel good. So your mind, your experience, that's stronger than that, hits you first before the actual physical sensation inside your brain and your body. But we've got so consumed with the physical that we want to label it and lock it in. So getting a diagnosis from a professional is, and some people may not want to hear this, but it will make it worse, because you've now got a professional saying, well, then, the professional said it, so therefore, so we rather...
It's making it more real. It's making it more embodied inside of you.
Exactly.
But aren't there a lot of people that, say, oh, I got diagnosed and now I feel better knowing what it is, because I was just going crazy, not sure what was happening to me or why I was feeling stressed or overwhelmed or anxious. Now this medical professional has labeled what it is and diagnosed me as having this mental condition. And I feel better now knowing. But are you just saying maybe temporarily it could help people feel better?
Yeah, it's temporary, and that's what the research shows.
But then you're living with this I am this condition forever until you reverse it or change it or see it differently.
Exactly.
Thank you for watching this video. If you want more inspiring clips like this, make sure to click right here to subscribe, and click right here to watch that next video that is specific to support you in your life.